But then if my orders finally came through to be assigned back to the the 77th Special Forces, which took the place of the 10th when I was there, and the 10th stayed in Germany, and then I got assigned to the 77, which was another Special Forces unit, and later on they changed that just to the 7th, the Special Forces, and that's when I got into sport parachuting and skydiving, and one of the original members of skydiving in the military. They had two civilians. One of the generals from Special Warfare Center decided that infiltrating into a foreign country, when the old method, when you were on an airplane, a C-46 or whatever aircraft, and whenever you fly in, you had to drop down to 2,000 feet. That was the jump altitude for static line parachuting, military parachuting, and then the radar would pick you up on the radar, and they say, well, something happened between when the plane was up here and when it dropped down to 2,000 feet, went across, and went back up 2,000, back up to the original altitude. They knew something happened, that somebody jumped in, and so the skydiving was the answer to that problem, because you learn to free fall, and you can free fall and not be picked up on radar from an airplane. So the airplane was just, 12,000 feet or whatever the case may be, and fly across, and you could exit out, fall down to 2,000 feet, open up your parachute, and land. And that was the theory behind it, and it was called HALO, high altitude, low opening.
Right. So when you were doing HALO, how high were you when you jumped out?
You go to 35,000 feet or 30,000, which depend on the weather.
Wow.
And then you exit over, and then
Did you have oxygen?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have oxygen tanks on you, and I got some pictures, and I still have the picture of it. They started with a HALO, and now they have HAHO, high altitude, high opening, and now they can open up at first of all, at 12,000 feet you don't need oxygen.
Right.
You can jump that, and maybe even up to 15,000, because you're only going to they have oxygen in the airplane, but once you exit, just hold your breath, and by the time it'll be only a matter of a short, maybe a minute, you're back in altitude to breathe. So
Yeah, 'cause you're falling.
And then you can land and all that. But then the HAHO is where you open up, fly at 35 or 30,000 feet, then open up and glide down to. You open up at. Let me back up. You open up at 30,000 feet,
Wow.
and then you're hanging in your parachute, and then you travel across with the winds will blow you into another country.
Wow.
So it was a clandestine operation type thing, where you can drift over to another country, about 30 miles, and land and not be seen. And so that was the purpose of it, and that's still active today. In fact, just a few years ago, a friend of mine, Billy Wall, and I were invited to talk to the HALO people down in Yuma, where they were training. The Army still has a military, installation there for training Navy SEALs, Rangers, Air Force Air Commandos, and Special Forces people in HALO operations and HAHO operations. And I got a chance to talk to the classes that were there and tell them what it was like to parachute back in the old days.
Got with round canopies.
Yeah, round canopies.
A little bit different than some of the ones they have today.
It was a 28-foot canopy.
Yeah.
And there was another thing when the two civilians came in and taught our rigger detachment, which does the packing of our parachutes for the military jumps.
Mm-hmm.
They were trained, four or five people there, to teach military free falling, and how to free fall and open up, and then had steerable canopies And then Jacques Estelle and Lou Sanborn were the two civilians. And Jacques Estelle was a ex-captain from the Army. But anyways, and he showed up with a bright red parachute with a one blank gore in the back. Gores are sections of the parachute where the suspension lines go over the parachute, create these panels. And what they did is take out a panel, put toggles on that outside of those lines on that one absent panel, and then they were able to steer. So more, and when we
Had
saw
more control over where you went.
so had a
instead of
control over
drifting.
the parachute where in which you could turn around, guide, and you had a little bit more forward speed than the regular old parachute that we had. And then when we saw that, and I was with still with Special Forces, and we were training. When we saw that parachute, and we went and got canopies we stole from the Air Force, and they had written on it "condemned, not for use,"
Yeah.
but they were free, So we stole as much as we could, or borrowed,
Right.
and then we
Midnight requisition.
and then we got it on the ground. Well, we'd get a pair of scissors out and we started cutting out panels.
Wow.
I said, well, if one is good, two should be better.
Oh my gosh, Dad.
And then we made, if you look at a canopy, it was upside down, like the letter T. You pair one blank gore and then two smaller ones, one on each side at the bottom of the parachute. And it's a 28-foot canopy, so it's a small canopy. And next thing you know, we made a TU, with two big gores missing and then a little thing. Well, it got to the point where our rate of descent was faster than our forward speed. So we decided we better stop because it was
Oh my
hard
gosh,
landing.
Dad.
And the other thing, too, was that...
No wonder you had 2 knee replacements, right?
And the other thing, too, is that we had the parachutes, when you just pack a parachute into a chute, but when you're at terminal velocity, when you do a free fall and you go down, say a 7,000-foot jump, that's 30 seconds. You got to fall. But when you jump and you don't have just a parachute only, then we had now we put it in a cloth bag to extend the lines out first, and then the parachute comes out and then opens up. But without that, when you got an opening shock, that parachute opened up. When had a pilot chute pulling the parachute out, when it opened up, it stopped you instantly, and just jerked the daylights out of you. And you wound up with the harnesses, rashes on your leg and up in your shoulder, strawberries, And then finally somebody said, well, let's put it in a bag and let the line extend and then open up, then the parachute will come out and you get a softer opening. So that was the way we had to do it. But at the time, the training that we had for free fall, you couldn't use altimeters or stopwatches. And you knew that you had to count 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. So this 7,000-foot jump for 30 seconds, you got to count to 3,000 or to 10,000 3 times, But meanwhile, when you're falling, it's one of the guys that come over and grab your foot, and put you in a spin. And you say, what was that? And you jump, and next thing you know, you say, 1,000, 2,000, 3. Oh, the hell with it. Open up. And you're way the hell up in the air, and you got to drift a long ways.
Oh my gosh.
But those were the days. And then finally we started using altimeters, and then the stopwatches, we didn't need them anymore. And altimeters to get us to the proper altitude. Now they open up, I think, at 3,000, but because it gives you more time if you have a malfunction. And I only had one time. I only had a problem where I had to pull my emergency parachute, and I was jumping with a friend of mine, and we were jumping at only a 15,000 foot, 45,000 foot jump, and or 4,500 foot parachute jump, and that's a 15-second delay, and so I was watching, and then all of a sudden he disappeared, and I said, oh, okay, and I looked at my altimeter, and it says, well, I still got 5 seconds or 10 seconds. And that seems like a long time, but when you're used to seconds. But then I looked down on the ground, and I saw the runway where we're at, and the taxi strip, and I said, why did I have to turn my head to see it?
Oh my gosh.
And then I realized, I looked at my altimeter, it was still saying,
It was
4,000 feet.
busted.
And I said, oh, so I pulled the ripcord, I opened up and made one oscillation with the parachute and landed. And I
Oh
said,
my gosh. That must have been a hard landing.
no, it just, it scared the hell out of me.
Again, someone who's watching out
It
for you.
may have been a hard landing, but I accepted it.
I think if you write a book, Dad, it's going to be someone who's looking out for me.
It was somebody up. That's right. Somebody upstairs
Yeah,
looking
God
after me again.
had other plans for you.
Yeah, and I said, "Wow." And so I got on the ground, and of course they were all panicking on the ground because they could see me, and they were hollering, "Open up, open up!" Of course I couldn't hear
Oh my
them.
gosh! Right, right.
And then I looked and I said, "Whoa!" I pulled that thing, and boy, when I opened up, made one swing with a parachute, and landed, and I thought, well, most guys probably would quit. And I said, I need another parachute. Anybody got one? And I went back up and made another jump.
Again, that falls back to your philosophy, though, about fear.
Yeah.
Right? You face it,
Yeah.
head on, and
accept it and live with it.
right. That's
Get
amazing.
over it. So anyway, and then I got assigned to Fort Leonard, Missouri, for reassignment back to Special Forces.
Okay.
And then when I got back to the Special Forces at Fort Bragg, then I went and picked up your mother and brought her to Fort Bragg, Kentucky, or Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And then I went to Bad Tolz, Germany, and at the time with the 10th Special Forces Group, where I continued jumping. And
When you were jumping during this time, was that when you became part of the Golden Knights?
yeah, that's after I.
So is that when you went to
after
West
I
Point?
came back
Okay,
from
so
Germany
we'll get to
the
that.
first
Okay.
time after
Right. So now you went to Bad Tolz.
after
Okay.
Patricia Marie was born,
Right.
and then came back to the States, and then I went back to Fort Bragg, and then at Fort Bragg, I was that's when we started skydiving.
Right,
and,
right. So you
skydiving, and then making parachute jumps, and teaching. There was Halo then, high altitude, low opening,
Right.
and then while I was there, we started the Golden Knights, the Army Parachute Team. It was called the STRAC. It's an acronym for Strategic Army Command. We called it Stupid Troopers running around a circle. But anyways, they changed the name back to at that time to the Golden Knights because it was more, better than an acronym.
Yeah.
And so I was with them when they first started. I was an original member of the skydiving at Fort Bragg, and then original member of Special Forces, original member of the parachuting, and Halo, and and so it was, to me, it was an exciting period of time.
I
And
bet.
again, it was all, dealing with any kind of fears I had, and being in Special Forces, I was the team sergeant for the German. While going back, Special Forces at that time too, it was based on the way CIA was at that time, because General Donovan and the commanding officer of Special Forces at that time too, Colonel Banks, who used the same system when they started the CIA. They had cells. Each cell had a different country, and each cell didn't know what the other cell was doing. And when we started Special Forces, then each team didn't know what the other team was. Like I had a German team, I didn't talk to the Russian team, or I didn't talk to the Hungarian team, or the Yugoslavia team, or any of that. And we see each other, but we never talk about what we did. We talked about jumping, skydiving, things related to, sports or something like that. But then all that changed later on to, General Donovan became the first person to start the CIA way back. And then Colonel Banks came and was part of that. And then they were actually, during World War II, they were on what they called the Jedburgh teams. and they were three-man teams that would jump into France during World War II and support guerrilla warfare activity,
Wow.
radio communications for resupplying, and demolition men, whatever, weapons men, just to protect, the communication section. And that was the reason why they, started special forces with the same theory as the Jedburgh teams. Each team didn't know what the other team was doing, but all that's changed now. But only because when Vietnam started, and we were one of the first units to go to, Vietnam, and to help train the South Vietnamese, and for support them, supply them with ammunition, weapons, and to work with the the mountain people. They were called mountain yards, and support them, train, organize, and equip them with the weapons so they can fight, the communists, North Vietnam. And then it grew into to where all of a sudden they were regular teams went over mainly to secure positions, set up camps, train, organize people to fight, guerrilla warfare. And that's what they wound up, special forces doing that. And we lost quite a few people during that period of time, in Vietnam, like even the infantry and the army, cavalry, and the other divisions that were there. It was amazing when you go to Washington, D.C. and see the wall, what they call the wall, with all the names of those that died.
Right.
Over 55,000 or something like that. So, but anyways, in Special Forces, going back to what I was doing, I was, doing all that jumping, and then we had a team that was going to compete in Romania for skydiving competition. But I had orders at that time too to go to Berlin, which I could have got out of that because the officer in charge of skydiving wanted to know. He said, "Well, you can get out." I said, "Well, I spent so much time jumping, parachuting, and free falling, which I really enjoyed. I had, 2,500 jumps, And I said, "Well, I love this," but I was gone all the time.
Right.
Every weekend we would jump as a sport. During the week we jump as military training, and everything else. I said, "Well, I think I better save my marriage." And so I said, "Well, I'll
Smart
take,
man.
I'll take. Well, we're going to go back to Germany."
Okay.
So I got assigned to Berlin, and Berlin at that time was the Berlin proper city was divided four ways after World War II: the British section, the French section, the American section, and the Russian section, which was East Berlin. And then there was a whole new different type of activity. We were there as a stay-behind operation. We'd train, organize. Back up a little bit. NATO was not strong enough to defend, say, a World War II or III type operation if Russia and East Germany and the German army wanted to take, the country again like they were planning to begin with. Well, then we couldn't stop them because we didn't have enough people, and of course we just finished fighting one war. So that was we stayed there to stay behind.
Right.
Organize, train, equip guerrilla warfare. And our job was I knew Berlin better than I did my hometown.
Wow.
And every sewer, every train, every railroad track, every bridge, people. We had to, we would, if war did break out, we know who we would contact priests, Catholic, church people, because they're the ones that can know the people. And then the police department that was there, and because we didn't have, the French had their organization, and the British had theirs, and we had ours, and ours was the stay-behind operation. And we were,
Gotcha.
if they came over, we were to go into hiding, and then pop out after they passed through us, and then call for supplies and organize train guerrilla warfare to interdict railroad trains and other communications and stuff.
Yeah, because during that time in Berlin, that's where Brett and I were born. I
Yeah.
mean, you were gone a lot, and it was also that time was kind of classified, right? I think it only
It was all
recently-
classified.
right. It only recently became
And they started,
unclassified. Where we can
they
even talk
started,
about it, right?
and the detachment, they started in the late 50s
Mm-hmm.
and then went all the way up until the 70s, 1970, when they finally, when the wall came down, then they finally, they came down, they didn't need Detachment A anymore.
Right.
And so they finally declassified it, and then people start writing books about it.
Right.
So I think you got a book. I don't know if you
You did give me a book one time that talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
talks about it, what they did, how they did it. So it became.
But you would
very-
go around and you would be in civilian clothing, right? And talk a little bit
Yeah,
about
when
what
I
you
was
actually
there,
did day to day.
we were dressed as Germans, German attire,
Mm-hmm.
German passports, German ID,
Wow.
driver's license, everything. So we were like Germans at the time, but nobody knew about it. Even the Russians didn't really know about us. But yet, when we'd go on patrol into East Berlin or East Germany, and we'd wear a uniform, But
Gotcha.
we had to get a haircut because we let our hair grow a little bit longer and all that. But anyways, we'd go there and they'd follow us around. And then because they were able to come into the West, and they would come around and drive around, and we'd follow them to see what they were up to. So we just, it was a whole different type of warfare in a sense. And then, I think I told you, we went to we'd go over there primarily. They go to what they call their PX, where they can post exchange, where you can buy supplies and stuff. Well, it was just a house, but nothing but all kinds of china and glassware from Leipzig, Germany, or Leipzig, East Germany, and these are, crystal glasses and all that. And the prices were so cheap at that time too, and it was just amazing what you can buy over there for what we called pennies.
Oh yeah, because it was you said $1 to.
Yeah, $1. A dollar is like 4 marks, 50 pfennigs in German, but then in East Berlin or East Germany, that 1 mark was the same thing. Like was 4 marks 50 pfennigs.
Yeah, and this is the Deutschmark, before the euro.
Yeah. Now it's a euro.
Yeah,
That's right.
Right.
So anyway, so we bought a lot of stuff naturally, come home with them. So it was fortunate. It was so good. But then when the wall came down, everything changed. And then we spent 6 years in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1966, okay, I came back, and I was going to be assigned to the 7th Special Forces back at Fort Bragg. And when your mother and I got there, and Debbie and you and Brett, I said, well, wait a minute. I saw Sergeant Majors picking up pine cones on the grocery store. I said, wait a minute, I want to be a Sergeant Major. And I was a Master Sergeant at the time. And I said, I want to be a Sergeant Major, but I'll be damned if I want to pick up pine cones. So
Why were they having you pick up pine cones? What do you mean?
Well, police call.
Oh.
When you have police go out and pick up any trash around the unit.
Oh, that's what it's called.
Area beautification.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyways, so we got in the car, and we just got back, so I had a 30-day leave. And so we decided, we knew Betty and Dan Brosnan.
Oh, yes, I
Yeah.
remember the Brosnans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were up. He was at West Point. And I said, well, my plan was to go from North Carolina to New York, into Canada, go across Canada, drop down through Ontario by the Detroit Bridge, Detroit River, and then go to E-Course. And that was our plan. And I bought a brand new car over in Europe, a Nash. It was the best car I ever had.
A Nash, I never even heard of that.
Nash Rambler.
Oh my gosh, I'll have to look
Yeah,
that up.
it was good. But it was a nice one, 4-door, all
Yeah.
that. And it was it was a great car. Everybody said, well, it never really took off as a car sales. Other cars, Ford Buick and Cadillac and
Right,
Lincoln, you know. But anyways, but I had that Nash, and it was, like I say, a great car, but it had room for, you know, for a family of what, 5 of us, and so it went down that way. But when I was at West Point, talking to Danny and Betty Brosnan, and they said, well, we need a coach for the parachute team, you know, the Black Knights, and I said, whoa, that sounds pretty good. I'll take it. So they introduced me to the commanding officer of the cadets. Danny was the post sergeant major for the post, and they were looking for, you know, a coach for the parachute team. And then it worked out good because I turned out to be the coach for the ski team too.
Yeah.
Okay, and the guy that was the coach of the ski team and the coach for the parachute team, they were leaving, and so it worked out great. So and they said, well, they take this guy, and so that's how I got into West Point. And then when I got in there, and I said, well, they were looking for the sergeant major for the Office of Military Instruction, which is also part of the, you know, the controlling all the sports activities for the cadets. And so they said, well, you get 2 for 1, you know. So I wound up being the coach, and was, you know, and I said we won the skydiving championship for intercollegiate championship in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, 2 years in a row, you know. And of course I came out smelling like a rose as the coach.
Right.
And then we won our first division championship in skiing. So and then when it was time for me to leave, I spent 3 years there.
Right.
And then when I left, and I wanted to retire from the service because I knew that I still had to get a job compared to, you know, with 22 years service, and had to get a job to work. I didn't want to stay until I was 28 for 28 years, even though I'd make more money. But I said, well, there's not that much difference between 22 and 28. So I said, I want to retire. But then again, I said, well, I haven't been to Vietnam, and I didn't want people to think I was retiring to get away from going to Vietnam. So I volunteered.
Wow.
And I told the general, send me over to Vietnam. I said, I got to put my time in, you know, a year in. And then they sent me over there. And then I got over there, and there was an opening for a sergeant major in a cavalry unit, and I got it. And so I wound up being the command sergeant major of a cavalry unit. And, you know, the big thing about that is that I was never in the cavalry.
Right.
But again, I said, I did try. I knew how to drive a tank, you know.
Yeah.
I said, but that don't mean nothing, you know, especially as the sergeant major. I said, but being the sergeant major, you know, I could pretty well write my own ticket, you know, and the commander. And I liked it. I'd fly with the commanding officer all the time. And we'd go out to the troops in the field in a helicopter, and you know, that's one of I got 2 air medals, you know, for so many missions, flying in the, you know, into the interior,
Yeah.
things like that.
But that was a different kind of war, huh? I remember you talking about that a little bit. Like,
Yeah, it's a whole different war compared to what we were. At nighttime, you know, the North Vietnamese controlled it, and during the daytime we controlled it, you know, because we went on patrols and stuff like that, and looking for, you know, recruiting people. We had what we call the mountain yards, which are people that lived in the mountains, and they were little people, and surprisingly, the Vietnamese people itself didn't particularly care for them, because they were not educated. They were just tribal people back in, like, it's like going down to the Amazon and running into a tribe of South Americans.
Right.
You know, and but they were great fighters, and we organized, trained them, and we'd have, you know, put a sergeant major in charge of a battalion of mountain yards, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and they go in and fight go look for it, you know, North Vietnamese military installations, and they would fight them and attack them. But the problem they had was that, first of all, the Vietnamese didn't know how to count the mountain yards. You know,
Oh my
we
God,
told
yeah.
them, you know, 5 rounds, 10 rounds. you
They didn't know.
So we had to teach them how to count. You know,
Wow.
but they were excellent soldiers. You know, and I think our government put the screws through them because you're there in order to work with the country. We'll guarantee you, we'll take you back to the States, or we'll train you and we'll work with you, we'll support you. And then when the war stopped, and we knew it. Like I said, I was there from 69 to 70, and I knew right then and there we were going to have move out, and I said, well, it's when we leave, the North Vietnamese is going to take it over, because the South Vietnamese were not that strong, the army, and the North was well organized. Colonel Banks was the CEO of Special Forces at one time, but he spoke fluent French, and he went over and the government asked him to go see Ho Chi Minh, the premier of North Vietnamese, and see what talk to him about war and whatnot, and he says, well, he came back and told the president then, well, if we don't fight, if we don't hire them for us, we're going to have to fight them, and we did. We wound up having to fight them.
Wow.
And they were good. He was good, a good guerrilla warfare type thing, and he gave us back what we were trying to train them for. So anyways, we lost a lot of troops over there, and unfortunately, and then we pulled out again, and people have told me before, said, you lost 2 wars. You lost the Korean War and you lost the Vietnam War. And I said, back off. First of all, we did not lose the military did not lose the war. Our government did, but our military did not lose the war.
Right.
And I said, anybody that says different, I'm going to kick your ass.
Exactly.
Speaking of kicking ass, that's when same time when they came back from Vietnam, and the people were spitting on you and all that in the military. And when I landed in San Francisco, I had my Green Beret. I always carry my Green Beret with me, and I put that Green Beret on. I stood up and I walked, and I dared any son of a bitch to come in and spit on me.
Exactly.
Because I was going to kick ass. That was my fight. And I'll tell you what, nobody touched me. Nobody,
Yeah.
they just, thank you for your service, But I said, hey, I'm not going to walk with my head down.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
you're the reason that we have our freedom today. Men like you, men and women like you, Dad. So.
But anyways, that was another little episode. But then I got back and I put my papers in for retirement from Vietnam while I was still over in Vietnam. And I got assigned to Fort Huachuca for the last 30 days of my military time. And I knew the sergeant major there. And I said, I'm going up to Phoenix. I'm going to look for a job. I'll sign the papers now. He says, well, do you want a parade? Because I was, because of being a sergeant major, I could have a military parade. I says, I paraded for every little sandwich or pop bottle when I was in the honor guard. And I says, tell the troops they can have the day off, as far as I'm concerned.
One of the things, Dad, I remember looking through your stuff, and it's, when I was talking about it the other day, it said jungle expert. And that always just kind of made me chuckle. It's like someone being called a jungle expert. So talk a little bit about like the jungle warfare,
Well,
like how you got, where you were trained and what they did for that training.
Special Forces, we got trained in Special Forces, everybody, and you have a team of 12 men. And each team you have so many weapons men, light weapons, heavy weapons, demolitions, radio operators, and everybody had to learn, and medics, and everybody had to learn each other's MOS, military occupation specialty, and that was their job. We had to learn their jobs as they had to learn our jobs. So I could deliver a baby and all these things. That may happen in war. I don't know, but anyway, I could do it. But we went through all that training, so we all had to know that everybody's job. And Special Forces, that was that kind of organization.
But they dropped you in the jungle, like for.
But then you could wind up in the jungle. So we took winter training, which I was in Germany, which I was the skiing part of it. That's what one of my jobs was, to teach skiing, winter warfare, and survival. And I tell you, talk about big, brave Green Berets. How everybody touts it, how tough and rough they are. We had a campsite outside our concern, where military installation where we were in Berets, Germany, and we had I told all the guys, okay, we're going to go for a week of survival training in the mountains, up, and we're going to go skiing. And actually, it wasn't really survival in a sense, but it was just training. But anyways, we turned around and they had to go out to the field. They packed their rucksacks. We inspected the rucksacks to make sure they didn't have candy bars and any other kind of food. And then we had rabbits, chickens, and a calf. So every man had to get a rabbit, kill it, skin it, cut it up, and we had a barrel of onions and a barrel of potatoes, cut them and wrap it up in tin foil, piece of rabbit, a piece of onion, a piece of carrot, pack it up and throw it in your rucksack, because it was freezing. They would freeze, and to do that. And anyways, it came to the rabbits, and each guy, there's some guys, they were Easter bunnies, red ones, white ones, pink eyes.
The Green Beret couldn't kill the little bunny rabbit.
And some of these guys couldn't kill a rabbit, and they were throwing their bayonets at them and everything else. I said, well, there goes you let the damn thing go, and I said, that's your food,
Yeah.
And they had every 2 men got half a chicken, or they each got a chicken, split in half.
Wow.
And then you had he killed the calf, and everybody got a piece of beef, and you pack it up with onion, carrot, and throw it in a backpack. For they said those are your meals, and they had we had little cook stoves that you could carry, but we started right there on the flat land, right by our base, our concern, and turned around and put the skis on and everything else. And then we put seal skins on the bottom of our skis. It was a strap, but it was made out of seal skin at that time. Now it's, of course, the Animal Society said you can't do that. So then they came out with a manufactured skin. But the seal's hair goes one direction.
Create the traction to climb uphill.
So you can slide and it won't go back. Slides, go back. And we herringbone and sidestepped all the way up the mountain in snow.
Wow.
Get up to the top of the mountain at the tree line before you get to the top of the mountain, and then gather some wood and sticks and then dig snow holes in snow, where you 4-man to a square hole, put your ski poles up, and put ponchos over it as a roof, and spend the night, and take your shoes off, your boots off, your ski boots, put them in your sleeping bag, and then, strip down to your long johns, and then, go to sleep. Roll your clothes up and put them in the sleeping bag with you. And occasionally you'll have some dumbass, turn around and leave his boots out. And of course they're trying to put them on in the morning, they're frozen. And he says, no, he's got a frozen boot, can't get into it, so he's got to hold it over the fire. It's going to be wet, but you got to put it on because you're going to be skiing. And then we ski across the Alps, and I enjoyed that part. That was the best part.
That's
and
awesome.
Then when we'd be up on the top of the Alps, and we looked down and we could see a ski area down below us. And they didn't have cable cars and all that then.
Right.
They had T-bars, rope tows, Pama lifts, things like this. And we'd ski on down in formation and stop and stack our rifles and our packs outside of the little guest house there. They had a restaurant.
Right.
And then we'd go in and have oxtail soup and a beer.
Wow.
Come back and get our weapons. And they'd let us ride the T-bar as high as it go, and we'd put our skis on, or our packs back on.
Right.
Because we had to carry them in your lap. And then we take off and go over, to another mountain range.
Yeah.
And we'd run into the German army and we'd run into the Austrian border patrol, and we'd ski with them and that. But that was for 5 days. Yeah. And the commanding commander, I had I had for our detachment commander, actually, for Detachment A in Berlin. And I served with him before. He was a World War II veteran and had one lung. He got
Oh,
wounded.
wow. Yeah.
And turned around and nobody was supposed to have anything extra, but being in charge, I had my tea bags and I had little bottles of whiskey.
Oh, okay.
So I told Colonel Mahan, he since passed on, and him and he was just a super guy. Anyways, but turned around and he was sitting around a group, and I said, here, sir, there's a canteen of hot tea for you. And he drank that and he took a sip. He says, God damn it, love. He says, I ought to court-martial you. He said, but second thought, I think I'll drink this. But we got along great. And like I say, for a one-lung guy.
For a one-lung guy.
He walked that. He went up with it.
Wow.
And that
one
deep
lung,
snow.
that's amazing.
And when you're herringbone and up a tree, up a hill, and sidestepping, and climbing up the mountain, that way. Well, the lead guy has to be replaced because when you put your ski in the snow and you got about up to here snow, that's 20. You can have 20 pounds of wet snow on your skis, so you get tired. Your legs get sore and you can't lift your legs anymore. So you just rotate. The next guy in line steps forward and everybody else, and then you get up to the top of the mountain. But he hung out, I guess. Really a nice guy. We communicated after he retired and I retired.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So then at this point, you after Vietnam, you retired here in Arizona.
Yeah.
So looking back, what is it? If there's one thing, I don't know, maybe there isn't anything, but if there's one thing that you really miss from the military, what would you think that would be?
I miss the camaraderie that we had with the troops, and I miss the leadership. I miss the being in charge type thing. I miss that.
Like leading.
Yeah, and so it was, but when I got I was fortunate to get a job with Xerox. And
well, but that was a big transition, right? You've been in the military for 22 years.
Yeah.
You've been around the world. You've done all this. I mean, you've seen so much and done so much. And so what was that transition like?
It was a bummer. It was terrible because, first of all, when I apply for a job and the guys would say, well, you're retired military, you're getting extra money. You don't need as much money as this other guy does.
What? They would try to pay you less because of that?
That's human nature.
Wow.
And I said, time this conversation's over. I'll walk out.
Good for you.
I said, screw you, asshole.
I love it, Dad.
So anyway, but I signed up with a headhunter unit. They looked for a job for me.
Right.
And they found a job at Xerox for office manager, and that's what I thought I wanted. And they said, well, they want an office manager. You can go for an interview. I said, okay. I didn't even know what Xerox stood for. And it was a brand new company. It's only been in existence like 3 or 4 years at the most. Anyways, and so I said, I went in there and got all these interviews. Well, I had such this, talking about all these war stories and everything else. Everybody liked my interviews. They could talk all that. And they said, well, we'd like to hire you, but we got a guy that's already been here, and we'd like to promote him to that. I said, well, you should, because he's worked hard for it probably, and go ahead and promote him. I'll take his job. I had no clue what the hell he was. I said, I'll take his job. And they said, okay. I said, what's his job? They said, well, he's the parts manager, or orders parts and the shelving and all that, and and passing out parts when they need them. I said, well, shit, that's nothing, but that's an easy job. I said, hell, I can do that. So I got in there, and the first thing I did was ask for money to pay for wood and shelves, and I built shelves. I put because all they did was get big boxes of parts from the national headquarters and ship to them, and they'd be laying all over, and the field service managers would turn around and they just walk through, pick out what they wanted and everything else. I said, wait a minute, bullshit. I locked the door. I put a Dutch door in, and I said, nobody comes in here. I said, you got a big inventory coming up here in a year, and it says you have no records. So I went right next door to the parts where we had the parts. They had a Kiva box company. They made little bin boxes for parts, and then I went over there and bought a bunch of boxes and put everything alphabetical, numerical order, and all the parts and everything else, and lined up, and we inventoried everything, and we were short some items, and I said, well, told the managers there, you're going to have to come up with some parts. So we were stripping parts from other machines that they were going to send back for refurbishing, and strip some parts out of it and clean them up, put them on the shelf. So my first year there, we were 100% on inventory. So they said, well. I says, well, now I want to go. You got a, human resource? And he said, yeah. I says, I want to be a manager, So they sent me to Syracuse, New York, and I went for management training there and became a manager.
So it's similar. I mean, you based your same philosophy in the military as you did,
Yeah.
in your civilian career.
Yeah,
So
it was,
became successful
And
again.
meanwhile, I taken a GI Bill for school education. I went to Scottsdale Community College, and at the time there was only 2 buildings out there on the reservation. It was right there on Pima Road.
Right.
And I said, well, I said, this is pretty neat, I said, I signed up on the GI Bill, and once started, said, well, get some college education. But I took I didn't get a degree or anything, but I took subjects I needed to learn how to become a civilian. How to manage money, investments, insurance, things like this here. So real estate, how to do all these things. So those are the subjects I went for. And then while doing that at nighttime, as long as you were going to college, you can go for promotions to higher elevations,
Right.
So,
And I think too, Dad, I know sometimes you make a comment that you don't have an education, but you have an amazing education, I think, because of, look at everything you've been through in life, what you've learned in the military, where you've been, what you've done. Like, I think you're more educated than the average person out there,
I did a lot of reading.
Right, exactly. I can never beat you in a trivia game. Let's just
military-
state that that's
In
for
the
sure.
military, they have a book for everything.
You know?
You have a book for everything you have to know. And
Right.
of course, you had, in the military, you had to learn chemical warfare. You had to work, intelligence. You just had a job. Everything. You just go get a book and
Right.
read it. And I read more books than you can shake a stick at, and I'm still reading.
Which is amazing. So let me ask you this, because now you're you're young 92.
Thank you.
And I always say you better live to be 100 or I'm going to be really pissed at you. So just so you know. But so at 92, like everything you've seen, right, from you were born like at the end of the Depression,
Yeah.
End of World War II. Tell me like what your thoughts about America, like where we were, where we are today. What was your favorite of all that span of those 92 years? Like what was your favorite time? And what do you think about where we are today?
Well, I feel sorry for the country today, because it was, but I still feel, patriotic, and I think that, I just think that we're going off in the wrong direction, and I worry about China and everything else because we're not prepared to fight another war, people-wise, military-wise, even the military. And we've allowed so much corruption in our system. People, as you know, are stealing everything left and right, and nobody's doing anything about it. Yeah. And I think our country is going to hell. But I still believe in this country. I think we still can do it. Trouble is, most Americans today aren't standing up to what they should be standing up to. And they don't want to do it for whatever reasons. You got other ethnic groups that are coming in, and they're making a living, and they want more and more, and they want, different some things, and they're getting it. But the people that should be defending our country, and this is, I guess, going into a racial thing. I could be considered a racist in one respect. I don't care what people think. I just feel that, it doesn't whether you're racist or what. Your job, if you're living here, you should defend our country. I remember when your mother, when she got her citizenship, and we were at Fort Bragg, and we had to drive to Wilmington, South Carolina, and she went in front of the judge. She had to repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. She had to repeat that, and
I
she
love
did.
that.
It was just, anyways. But that now they just hold a flag up and you're a citizen. And I disagree with that. I believe in God, and I believe in our society, and it's my job to I want to stay strong, and I want to defend it. And if they have another war, if I can go in as a 92-year-old sergeant major,
You would
being
be there.
office
Yeah.
type thing, then I'll do it.
Wow.
But I still think that we're a strong nation and we can recover. It's like that movie that had World War II, and when the Navy thing, I forgot the name of the movie, Pearl Harbor or something like that, and one of the Japanese leaders said, "I think we just woke up a sleeping tiger."
Mm.
And then they found out they did.
Yeah.
But our people, was able to reunite and get together.
Yeah.
So.
What is it that you would want to leave, like, as a legacy? What is it that you feel that you want to leave behind that?
Well, I just want people to know that I'm not the only one out there that feels this way. All the guys I knew in the military were all dedicated military, and they're dedicated to the country and support the country. And I want people to know how much I love, how much I love this country.
I love you, Dad.
And I can't believe I'm doing this. But, and as far as, you putting this book together and your plans for that, and I think that our little sphere of influence that we have, our family, understands that. Shit.
It's okay, Dad. Yeah.
But I just want people to know, what we went through to get here.
That what we have today is because of you and so many other men, that we have. And what saddens me is that there's so many people that don't understand that don't understand and appreciate the freedom that we have today, right? They don't see it, they don't understand it. A lot of them didn't go through it, they take it for granted. And it's only because of you and people like you that we have what we have today, and we have the freedoms we do.
Well,
and I know there are still
thank you for that, but
a lot of people that do realize that, and unfortunately there's, the ones we see on the media and stuff, aren't so much, but I know that majority of people do feel that way. I believe that in my heart.
And I believe in what you're doing, and I'm glad you're doing it, and I appreciate it. And I think it's going to be good. I want people that, our family, I may not have influence on other people, and I have some influence, hopefully, with our family that we have as a whole. And
Well, yeah, I
And I
know
want
from
them.
being your daughter that I can tell you that, no, my turn to cry, but that, you know, the influence and the impact you've had on our life and what you've taught us, that, you know, we appreciate everything we've had. I know that both Debbie and Brett, you know, we've worked hard for, we believe in that. You've always instilled that in us to work hard for what we have and to, you know, have faith in this country and love America the way we do. And I wasn't born here. You know, Brett and I were born in Berlin. But we automatically got our citizenship, and I have always truly honored that so much that I have, you know, my American citizenship, and I think it's a beautiful country, and people just can't imagine, you know, why we have what we have today, and the reason we do, and it's because of our history and the people that fought for that.
Yeah, so I just want them to know, you know, what people went through to get where we were, and how it's been distorted by, you know, some of our government officials, you know, our country, people leading that are so self-serving that they forgot the principles of what America is all about.
What was one of your fondest memories with everything you did?
Well, the fondest memories is just watching you kids being born.
Aw, thank you, Dad.
And your mother, you know, she bless her heart, you know, I couldn't give her all the things I would like to have gotten her, you know, like what I could do today compared to what I did then with your mother is a whole different world.
Right,
you
right.
know. But I also believe, too, that one of the things about the military, you had to save, and I still believe that.
Right.
You know, and I send you guys these magazines all the time about
Yes, I know.
budgeting and saving and
Right,
spending and everything else.
right.
You know, and I tell you that, you know, I'm still saving at 92 years of age, you know, and I'm having,
But you also enjoy life, Dad. I mean,
well, we
because
do
I
it,
think it's
and we
important
can
to have that balance.
We can afford to do anything we want,
Right.
you know, all because I've been saving.
Luckily, you were blessed, and shortly after that, you met Patty, and you guys have been together ever since.
Yeah.
And you have a beautiful life up here in Pine Top,
Yeah,
Arizona.
but did,
and
you know, skiing and golfing and a lot of friends. It's amazing
Right.
how many people we know up here.
so, what is the one thing you want to leave people with? Like, what would you like to say to kind of wrap this up and leave
I just
people
want
with?
I just want you to be happy, enjoy life, be productive, you know, raise a family with, you know, with under God, and just you know, become a good citizen. You know, that's the only thing we can have, you know, hope for. Be patriotic, support your country, you know, and be upfront with people, be honest, and tell it like it is. So.
Awesome, Dad. Well, I love you more than you can imagine, and I love the fact that we got to sit down and just kind of have this conversation to share you with everybody else, to see what an amazing man you are, what an amazing father you are, and you know, so I've always so appreciated your service and all your stories over the years, and I get to hear more and more. You know, as you've aged, you've been willing to share more and tell more. And we didn't share all the stories today. I know there's a lot of really amazing stories, a lot of horrific stories we didn't share, but maybe another time. But I love you, and thank you.